son Peter's college graduation this month. I know college graduation has become a dodgier prospect than it was when I was in college, so congratulations on getting through college. And for all the other graduates who are graduating this month. So now before we begin our service, let's take a moment to wave to the people watching from home and then rise and greet our neighbor, or if you're watching on YouTube, say hello in the chat. And when you hear the singing bowl ring, please return to your seat. So let's wave to the folks at home and take a couple of minutes. Say hello. So once a month here at First Church, we collect an offering that we call Share the Plate. Each month, we dedicate the proceeds of that offering to an organization that shares our UU values. This month, we will be sharing the offering with the Transgender Advocacy Council, to which Kathy Allison will now introduce us. So Kathy, if you could come forward. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kathy Allison. I'm with the Transgender Advocacy Council. We're the only 100% transgender-led 501c3 nonprofit in the greater Cincinnati area that supports specifically transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming adults. There are two that support children, Living with Change, who's kind of on hold because of the ban on adolescent medical care, and Transform, which is helps people get their first set of clothing for the gender they identify. But we are made up of representatives from the three largest transgender support groups, Crossport, Heartland Trans Wellness, and the Trans Empowerment Network. Now, this is really kind of a big thing. We were formed as an umbrella organization because the history of the transgender community in Cincinnati is a lot like every community, everywhere. One group forms, and then another group forms due to a schism, and then another group forms from another schism, and so then they don't talk to each other. So it took us 5 years, but right now we are, all the major transgender support groups are working together for the first time. We have 3 primary functions. We make sure that there is a Transgender Day of Remembrance every fall. And we make sure there's a Transgender Day of Visibility every spring. And I see at least one face who was at our Transgender Day of Visibility this year, Reverend Jeff. The third thing we do is we have a Transgender Emergency Fund. And if you are in a financial difficulty, we can grant you up to $300 annually. So if you could switch to the next slide, please. So this is the impact that we've had on our transgender and non-binary community over the last 4 years. We started the fund in September of 2021. So it's not been a full 4 years yet, but it's been in 5 calendar years. These numbers are actually a little bit low because they're based on the end of April, where we had given out over $24,000 to over 100 individuals. I know just last week we donated another $1,440 to 5 individuals. So the needs are out there and they're massive. Last year, 87.5% of the money that was donated to our organization went right back out to the community in the form of grants. So, next slide, please. So, these are the URLs for both our organization and then the 3 support groups that operate as part of TAC. Crossport's the oldest one. They were actually formed here in Cincinnati in 1985. I found them in 1987. And they saved my life. And they saved my marriage. I've been married 45 years. See, I'm actually old enough to actually shop at the old Sears store across the street. I try hard not to look it. And then Heartland Trans Wellness was formed in the about 2015 because at the time Crossport was being run by some people that didn't understand that non-binary was a thing. So even within our community, there's misunderstanding. So everything's teaching. And then the Trans Empowerment Network is the newest group. They're very active politically, but those 3 groups are all nonprofit associations. Because they're nonprofit associations, they can't take donations directly. So they work underneath TAC. We can take the donations, and then we use the money for those groups. So I thank you very much for your time, and I really appreciate you all asking me to come down and talk today.
So during the musical interlude, the ushers will pass the offering plate to take up our share of the plate offering. Thank you.
controlled. I am sovereign in my body. I am sovereign in my soul. We will not be controlled. I am sovereign in my body. I am sovereign in my soul. We will not be controlled. I am sovereign in my body. I am sovereign in my soul.
You know, last night I was hanging out with a few of you and was asked to talk about how this church is different than previous churches I've served, and my answer was, this is a shockingly effective and efficient group by comparison. And here's the latest example. I needed somebody to remind me for us to light our chalice. So thank you for that efficiency and keeping me in my lane. Linnea, Los, would you come forward and light our chalice for us? Thank you so much. And since Linnea is up here, I just want to thank Linnea for actually organizing the vast, vast majority of our weekend, including the film on Friday night and the service today. And so thank you, Linnea. Got it. All right, thank you.
I keep fighting voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong. Oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong. Oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe. Taking all I have, and now I'm laying it at your feet. You'll have every failure, God. You'll have every victory. You say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am held when I think I am weak. You say I am loved when I am falling short, when I don't belong. Oh, you say I'm yours. Oh, I believe, oh, I believe what you say of me. Oh, I believe, oh, I believe.
The reading this morning comes from Acts chapter 8, verse 26. Now an angel of the Lord said to Philip, "Rise and go toward the south, to the road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. This is a desert place."
Is this still on? Yes. I wasn't planning to say anything, but I wanted to say thank you for welcoming us this morning to this service. Last night, MUSE was sang at an event for marriage equality to celebrate 10 years of gay marriage being legalized. And even though that was such a victory and has been such a victory, we cannot take anything for granted. And we must keep up the fight.
We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. We shall not give up the fight. We have only started. We have only started. We have only started. Never ever put to flight. We're bound to win. We're bound to win. We are bound to win. Never ever put to flight. We're bound to win. We're bound to win. We are bound to win. Together we'll have victory. Hand holding hand. Hand holding.
Good morning. Bring you in the aspect that it is an American Baptist church, and they called an openly gay pastor. Yes. And I have to admit, I probably have one of the best first men you could ask for in my husband, Michael. He's very supportive and reared in a charismatic, kind of Pentecostal background. Himself, he likewise was surprised to find that there are safe places to worship God, safe places to meet the divine, safe places to be in fellowship with one another without fear. And this is such a place. Thank you for making this place possible, all of you. It is a blessing indeed. So I am originally from northern Kentucky. I grew up in this little place called Rabbit Hash. For those of you who don't know, I brought Michael down to meet the people. So we went down to the general store. And Michael's like, "Where are we?" I said, "We're in Rabbit Hash." And he goes, "Where's Rabbit Hash?" I said, "This is it." So we got out and we started walking around, and it had been quite some time since I'd been down to the general store. And the folks were warm and receptive. They came up. The mayor met Michael and began immediately licking him. For those of you who know, the mayor of Rabbit Hash, Kentucky has always been a dog, and a friendly dog. And so, Rabbit Hash, Kentucky is where I grew up for the most part, in a Southern Baptist church. And in that context, things were very tight and very strict. And that was the context in which I really became introduced to the concept of the divine, specifically. But I believe intuitively, there was always this element that would ask questions. You see, I was curious and open, wanting to know, what's this life about? And it must be about more than what I can see or touch or smell. There must be more to this life than what's on paper. And with that curiosity and with that openness, my journey began. And I believe that that is an element that I continue to carry with me. And it seems to serve me well in most circumstances and sometimes not so good in others. But I'm grateful for that openness and that curiosity. When I came out several years ago, I continued being open and curious. And so one of the first things I did when I came out is I rushed, not leisurely, I rushed to a Goodwill store and bought 3 dresses. I did. And you know how hard it is to find a dress that fits a guy? Yeah, it was hard. And I shopped, and I had never gone shopping for women's clothing before. And as a dad with 3 grown adult daughters, it was kind of fun. And so I bought 3 dresses, and I tried to find shoes, but that's not going to happen. I looked for a long time, but couldn't find them. And so I wanted to present myself to myself and see if it fit. And so I did. And I remember standing in the mirror, looking at myself with this dress on and thinking, this isn't me. this isn't me. However, I have the ultimate respect for people who, when they look in the mirror and they see themselves reflected, they say, this is me. This is who I am. And for those folks who look in the mirror and they're just like, I'm not certain, it could be, maybe on Tuesdays, but not on Wednesdays. Maybe on Thursdays, but not on the weekend. Respect. Respect. It takes a lot of courage to be yourself. And it takes a lot of courage to discover who you are. And it takes a lot of courage to have a community where that can be experienced. How many of you like Starbucks? Okay. I mean, every time I get the coffee, it tastes burnt. Every day. Maybe I have an addiction. But I love Starbucks coffee. And Michael and I often go to the Starbucks. We live in Dayton, Ohio, at the Schuster Center. And we have a wonderful group of baristas we've come to know. And one of those baristas is a gentleman named Daryl Demure. Daryl is very special. I want to tell you a little bit about his story. Daryl grew up in the 60s and 70s in the Dayton area. A man of color, a very bold man of color, very kind. And he recalls being raised by his mother and grandmother and knowing his father, but his father was somewhat distant but still present in the picture. And he said his father was really only happy one time a year, and that was Halloween. And Daryl recalls that he remembers his dad dressing up in drag on Halloween and going up and down an area in Dayton called the Oregon District. And he said that was the only time he felt that his father lived his best life, was when he could be in drag. And in that period of time, that was allowed. So Daryl, who goes by the name Miss Demure, when she's in drag, is a proud human, a kind human. Michael and I often have, at Christmas time, the last several years, a Christmas party, and we invite like 100 of our best friends over, and we celebrate together in our home, and Miss Demure comes as Miss Demure. And she's beautiful, and she's kind, and she makes friends, and she shares who she is. Not only that, Miss Demure has the nation's oldest LGBTQIA public access variety talk show in the nation, hosted in Dayton, Ohio. She's an advocate for the community, and she is very present. Miss Demure came to Dorothy Lane American Baptist Church when I was installed as pastor. And I don't know many American Baptist churches that have drag queens at their pastor's installation. But she came, and she was received and appreciated, welcomed, and she's been back several times in drag and out. We've had several folks show up and find this congregation to be a warm and kind place. And I'm very grateful for that. Miss Demure has told me several times, Jeff, when I'm in the midst of God's people and they welcome me, I know this is the place of the divine. For Miss Demure has said to me several times, I am a part of the divine and the divine is a part of me. And when I'm in a place where I can be me, then I know the divine is there. And that's beautiful. The passage of scripture from the book of Acts that I read this morning is the marching orders, if you will, of the evangelist Philip the evangelist, not to be confused with Philip the apostle. Philip is sent to meet someone that no one expected. He's sent to a desert place to wait. Now I can imagine Philip being sent somewhere and not knowing who his appointment is with. He's just sent to be open and curious. Often our divine appointments are not scheduled, are they? They happen. As we are open and curious, as we go out through our days and out through our moments, to have this open mindset that the divine is sending us on a mission. The Spirit leads Philip to a person that we call the Ethiopian eunuch. What about the Ethiopian eunuch? What do we know? We know that the Ethiopian eunuch was a man of wealth, a man of prestige. We know from the record in the scripture that the Ethiopian eunuch was reading from the book of Isaiah, a passage about the suffering servant, and was confused. Who is this suffering servant? Many scholars believe that the Ethiopian eunuch identified themselves as the suffering servant. You see, because as a eunuch, they were not permitted into the temple. They weren't permitted to worship like other folks. And so here's this person of much responsibility, much wealth, wondering and looking with questions. And here comes, and the scripture says that Philip rushed quickly to the Ethiopian eunuch. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm a person of prestige and someone comes running up to my car, what you gonna do? You lock the doors, roll up the windows, and drive, right? So the Ethiopian eunuch is in their chariot and is just available. Because what we find about the Ethiopian eunuch is they are also curious and open. When curious and open meets curious and open, the synthesis, the intersectionality of that is powerful. Margin meets margin. What we find out in this engagement with Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch is traumatic. You see, God sends Philip to the eunuch. God doesn't tell Philip to stay put and hold up a sign. All eunuchs welcome. God tells Philip to go with very little instructions otherwise. This is indicative of a new call, a change in the movement of the divine among God's people. We often wonder, who is too odd? Who is too weird? Who's too outside of the boundaries of the norm for God? A couple of months ago, I walked into Dorothy Lane American Baptist Church, and I was running a few minutes behind. I know that never happens with your pastor, but I was running a few minutes behind, and some of the deacons came up to me and said, "Jeff, we have an issue." And I said, "Okay, well, what's going on?" And they said, "We have a 6'4" nun in the worship area with a beard." I said, what? They said, we have a very large person dressed up like a nun, speaking in Latin phrases. They're very tall and they have a beard. What do we do? I said, but just love them. What do you do? Be kind, let them feel welcome, and everything will be okay, And it was more of a test for the congregation, I think, in the sense that this actually turned out to be a dare that someone in the community had put on this person to show up to a Baptist church dressed up like a nun. But Dorothy Lane American Church shone because they were warm and receptive and kind and invited them to the fellowship afterwards, right? And so it was a beautiful moment, a beautiful encounter. You see, the divine seeks those on the margins, those who feel excluded and the outliers. There is energy, by the way, in the margins. Did you ever notice that? There's energy in the margins where sunlight meets shade, where heat meets cold, where land meets water, where the knowing meets the unknowing, where certainty meets curiosity. There's energy at that point, and often the divine is moving in those areas. And if we want to energize our faith, we will be pulled towards the margins where curiosity is. I want to share with you a little bit about the Old Testament. We love that, don't we? I don't know if after so many years of Bible college and seminary, I would think I would be a little bit more excited about sharing Hebrew words with you. And if I have any Hebrew scholars here, I apologize already because my pronunciation may not be top-notch. It's been a minute. But I want to share with you a few terms that I think are important. There is a common dialogue circulating now that there's only two genders, male and female. Has anyone heard that? Is that news? Yeah, we've heard that. There are only two genders, male and female. And so when I have this conversation, which isn't too often, but when someone comes to me with that, I'll say, okay, so you're aware that in rabbinic theology, there are actually 6 genders, right? And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, no. I'm like, yeah. 6 recognized in rabbinic teachings, ancient. 6, not just 2. So then I'll say, so what's your source for the 2-gender conclusion? And they're like, the Bible. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. Let's talk about this. They never want to talk about it. They never want to talk about it. But I want to introduce this concept to you if you've not heard this before. So in Hebrew theology, there is Zachar, which is male, a cisgender male. We might draw up Noah, possibly, as an example of that. Nikivia, female, cisgender female. And then we might, Miriam, for example, would be an example of Zachar. Nikivia is the example of Miriam. Androgynos, both male and female traits are intersex. This one I really like, tum-tum, T-U-M, T-U-M. Ambiguous or hidden sex characteristics. Elonet, assigned female, but lacks female puberty traits. Some believe that Saul's daughter Micah was of this description. And then Saris, assigned male, but lacks male puberty traits or was castrated. And certainly the Ethiopian eunuch would fall into this category. Also, it's believed that Daniel and his friends from the Old Testament, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, would have fallen into this category. Serving in the Babylonian court would have typically been castrated in order to serve appropriately. So why would they go to the trouble, the Hebrew folks, the scholars, to come up with 6 separate gender identities? They recognized that we don't present our genders necessarily according to our biological parts, but that we have gender identifiers that are a part of our personality, a part of our presentation, if you will. We are not simply identified by our visible biology, but by the way we see ourselves and the way we engage with the world around us. It's much more complicated than we would like to think. I mentioned earlier that I'm a dad. I have 3 grown daughters. I have 4 grandchildren. My middle daughter came out 10 years before I did. She and I were sitting in the front seat of a U-Haul truck. I mean, seriously. And she's like, Dad, I think I might be, big pause, gay. And I'm like, no, like really you are. There was no guessing about this, but she had to come up to it with her time and her place and to feel comfortable in her shoes. And she's like, no, Dad, I really am gay. I'm a gay woman. I'm a gay person. And then years later, she met her person, Cade. They met in university. Cade is non-binary, and they're married. Cade is a PhD student at Duke in classical languages, and we don't talk about Hebrew. They're so much smarter than I am, and I make perpetual mistakes with pronouns and misgendering, unintentional. It's just in process, right? My understanding goes on the spectrum, meaning I'm coming along. I'm growing in my ability to fluidly identify Cade in a non-binary manner. So I asked my daughter, Lauren, I said, Lauren, what are your pronouns? And she said, she, they. And I said, explain. And she goes, Dad, simply this, you are always going to be wrong. Thank you, Lauren. She is the child that was meant to instill humility in her parents, and Lauren has been a fighter for human rights. Recently, she was working at one of the nation's largest immigration resettlement organizations with LGBTQIA refugees from the Middle East. That position was lost because of federal budget cuts, and now she's the communications director for an organization working to abolish capital punishment. She is ingrained in the margins and working with people on the edges. Lauren's faith is deep and complicated. Deep and complicated. People in the Q+ community often carry with them something called religious trauma. Is anyone familiar with that? Religious trauma. How can you be accepted and feel safe in a community of people who have labeled you poorly? I was in London, Kentucky, 2 days before the tornadoes hit, speaking to the Pride of London, a group of Q+ folks who gather. And they wanted encouragement. And so I went down and was talking with them. And they said, Jeff, we have a question for you. What is an abomination? And why do people say that's what we are? And I said, doubtless, those people who call you abomination probably don't know how to spell it. And they probably don't know what it is either. And you're not an abomination. You're created in the image of the living divine. You are beautiful. You're received and accepted. As a matter of fact, I would tell you that you're preferred. Preferred. In Isaiah, there's a passage of scripture that talks about the eunuch and says, if you follow in your faith, you will be called by a name more precious than son or daughter. For the one who feels as if they're without a home in their faith, to be called by a name more precious than son or daughter. What is that? It's my child. You belong to me. The Ethiopian eunuch, once Philip was able to explain who the suffering servant was and how they could have access to the suffering servant, openly received this news. Yes, I want to believe. Yes, I want to be received. What keeps me from being received? And Philip's looking around. He goes, oh, there's some water. I want to fully place you within the community, was Philip's response. And here, this Ethiopian eunuch who was outside of the norm, who was in the margins by race, by color, by origin, by orientation, is now part of the community. There's a little interesting footnote. The Ethiopian eunuch went back to Ethiopia, served the queen of Ethiopia. Candace is like a name like we would have for Caesar, for king. Candace is another name for queen. Served the queen and shared their faith. And it's recorded that there was an uninterrupted time of peace and prosperity and growth in faith in Ethiopia that rivaled Rome's, because someone was open and curious and went with very little instruction and met another person who was open and curious, and they received one another. The church may struggle with inclusion, but God does not. When we reflect God's welcome, people find healing, belonging, and joy. And that's what we need. We need to be healed. We need to feel welcome. And we need to experience joy. This story of Philip and the eunuch is a blueprint for how we should approach gender diversity in the church, with curiosity, humility, and welcomeness. Are you seen as you are right now? Do you feel seen? Do you feel heard? Do you feel welcome? Do you feel loved and celebrated? You are apart, joined together. The divine has never had a question about you. God receives you and celebrates you as you are, where you are, how you are, and says, welcome into our fold. You are loved. That's the change. When the Ethiopian eunuch received, Philip went. The whole direction and dynamic of God's plan for the world was reflected through that motion. No longer do we have all the categories and subcategories of who's allowed to come to God according to your gender identification. Now we are all one. There's no Jew. There's no Gentile. There's no male. There's no female. There's no slave or bond. We are all one. And that is the plan. I want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for focusing on the needs of our community. Some of the sweetest people I know, the kindest people, and I would say the godliest people that I know are those who have struggled and have gone through the journey of finding out who they are. It isn't easy, folks. It isn't easy. But they are our heroes. Amen.
So our final hymn this morning is number 1014 in the Teal hymnal, but the author of the hymn changed some of the words a few years back. It's called in the hymnal, Standing on the Side of Love. He rewrote it to call it Answering the Call of Love, and so if you know it, you can just watch the words on the screen behind the pulpit, and if not, just turn to the hymn in the hymnal, and instead of singing Standing on the Side of Love, sing Answering the Call of Love. So if you would, please rise as you are able. So please be seated, and a special thank you to Reverend Perkins this morning for your message. We loved having you here last year when we did our transgender weekend. We love having you here again, and I think we need to make this a yearly thing if you're willing and able. So. And are you okay with Jeff? All right. Jeff and Michael, I'm going to tag Michael here. We'll do the receiving line following our service today. And so if you'd like to say hello to them, you can do that. I'm actually going to do a rare thing and make a beeline to coffee hour and get some coffee on a Sunday for a change. So, Lenny, if you would come forward and extinguish our chalice, I'd appreciate that. With Kathy. Thank you, too, Kathy, for coming today. Thank you, MUSE, for singing today. It was wonderful to have you. And again, thank you, Linnea, for helping to organize this weekend. And Trish. Where's Trish? And Trish. So may you be filled with the blessings of this beloved community. May you carry these blessings with you as you go out into the world. May you discover the places in the world where these blessings are needed, and may you have the courage and the love to share them. Blessed be, my friends.